Hey there. I wanted to share with you a little bit tonight about my approach to phrasing and performance of a piece. And just what am I thinking as I go to present a piece and to work on a particular phrase of music? And we're going to be using Rachmaninoff's Vocalise. I'll give you a couple seconds of it. Beautiful piece of music. One of the most talented composers ever. Well, I would say that some of the things that go through my mind, and let's just assume for the purposes of this discussion that you have enough technical skill in terms of how you attack a note and hold a note and the tone that you can provide in a note where you actually have some skills, that you've developed so that we're not dealing with that problem. And let's assume that in this case that either you're very familiar with the piece or can read music, so because we're going to have to be thinking about what's happening in the moment within the context of a little bit larger picture. I guess what I just said is if you can read music, you've got a real advantage over others when it comes to classical music and other pieces because you got a roadmap. And the composer oftentimes will kind of tell you what gets what. But I was somebody who wanted to learn to read music for a long time. I wanted to, and it was a goal, but I didn't do it. These days, I spend an hour to 2 hours reading music a day, 7 days a week, because I have to be able to read it as well as I read a book. And it was only recently that it came along. So I was kind of like just one of those guys that wanted to, Even when I was doing a lot of classical singing, I had a good ear. I didn't have to read music. And I read it when I played piano, but not real well. I was never really locked. But anyhow, getting back, some of the things that go through my mind. A big question for me is how much emotion am I going to throw into the piece? Is it a piece that's a very nuanced piece, or is it a piece that depends on tremendous, crescendos of volume and feeling? So I'll kind of look at it emotionally. How does that go? And then I might take a look at what is the part of the piece that should be maybe gentle, and what are the parts that are going to be like a focal point for a crescendo of energy and even dynamic level, as in more volume. So in other words, what's high, what's low, what's soft, where is the big the peak of the piece emotionally, where is it? So I'll listen to it. Now, how do you begin to get a grasp on a piece of music? A couple of ways. Number one is to listen to recordings by all kinds of performers on all kinds of instruments to see how did they approach that particular piece of music. So that I find that to be very, very valuable. But now we're going to get into the part that I spend a lot of time on, which is phrasing, the actual, in a phrase of 4, 6, 10 notes, how do I approach it? Well, I actually think deeply about what is the role of each note within that phrase. Because notes have different roles. It's like a play. Some of the notes just kind of pass something on to something else, and others are kind of a focal point. And so I'm going to go through one classical interpretation of this Vocalise and sing it for you. Then I'm going to show you the way I play it, which is kind of different, but I'll give you both perspectives. In this particular piece, and I'm going to show you the score for those of you who can read this. Let's just look at the top line together. We go, okay? Na 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 na. Now, what's going on there? Well, here it's na na na. The second kind of has a more punch to it because that's what gives the emphasis to that beginning of that particular piece. So it's not na na na. It's not na na na. It's not that. It's more na na na. The second one gets more punch. because the first is just kind of an intro to that point. No. Now, if you want to understand the role of the note there, sing it without what's there and just do the one note and see what happens. No, 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 no. It's not interesting. That no, no, no gives a focal point in the mind. And you're set up to hear it because you heard the first tone. No, no, no. Passing tone, up again. And then you have kind of a mirror. No, 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 no. So my point is, it goes, no, no, no. That's the real passage, and the rest are just kind of passing tones. So, let's listen to this piece again, and you'll hear it, and I'll point up when I'll go like this when there's emphasis. Here we go. You hear it? Now you hear it, and you're like, oh, he's right. That does stand out. Okay. That would be classical interpretation. And yet, when I play the piece, I go just the opposite. I go soft on those notes because as an experienced performer, I know that I can get audience involvement with counterintuitive moves that are not expected, and that by speaking in a quieter voice, I might get people to listen a little more. So let me play it to you the way I play it, and you'll go, my God, he just broke all the rules, but it works. That's what happens when I start on a wrong note on this. A real mess. I have to try again. So you see, by going just the opposite and having those notes of emphasis a little quieter, there's still points of emphasis, just their emphasis because they're gentler and softer, and that's what makes the audience kind of go that. But I like it because it becomes a more nuanced, gentle interpretation. Let me play it the way they're playing it, and then I'll go back and do it the way I do it. So here we go. This is the way they're doing it. To me, it's a little pedantic and predictable. Listen to what my approach with the soft hit on that note does. Now, I might use a hair of rubato, slowing it up just a little bit to hit the note to get more emphasis on it. But I draw the audience in by the soft, rich velvet feel of the note. So I'm still following their pattern. I'm just doing it a different way. In other words, I'm getting emphasis on those notes, but not with volume. I'm doing it with a subtle, gentle play. So here we go. It works. So even when you work within the rules, you can break the rules. You know, what I knew is that those points of emphasis were there. How I would get that emphasis was another point entirely, and in this case, it was a softer. I'm going to play it one more time for you, and you can hear again this approach. Phrasing, flow of the things, and how you create the magic, which is actually through technique. Hope you enjoyed this.